Hey everybody, it's Paul Allen, play-by-play guy for the Minnesota Vikings from the TCO studios with Pick 6. And we thank you very much for submitting some very compelling questions. And we begin with Nate from St. Paul. All signs point to the next offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings being promoted from within. Is there any chance an outside hire is made? Well, there absolutely is a chance, and I would imagine constituents from all over the league recognizing this is an offense with a high-end running back, a very good backup, an accomplished quarterback, a couple of nice receivers, tight ends, second-year center, who undoubtedly will get better in Garrett Bradbury. I would imagine that there will be interest and intrigue from the outside. Mike Zimmer in his season closing press conference stressed the emphasis of continuity and keeping it the same. I would imagine the next offensive coordinator comes from within this building, Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Thanks for the great question. Here's the next question. It is from Jack. Let's switch over to the defensive portion of the equation. Wade Phillips. Possibility for defensive coordinator, big name, most recently worked with the LA Rams. He's also worked with Gary Kubiak in Houston, and according to Jack in Hudson, Wisconsin, is one of the best defensive coaches ever. Wade is incredibly well respected, and his equity goes without question. Now, kind of like from an offensive coordinating standpoint, if I were rolling the dice on the way things are going to work here, certainly in no way speaking for the team, I would imagine the next defensive coordinator is at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Some of the names that have been mentioned via the media include Mike Zimmer's son, Adam Zimmer, the linebackers coach here for many years. Also, incredibly well-respected defensive line coach, Andre Patterson. So I would say Wade, terrific equity and respect, but I think the answer is here at TCO Performance Center. Thanks for the great question. Let's move on to Terrell in Orlando. We said this last year, but it seems like the team has to make roster cuts for cap purposes. Is there any way to avoid this? The quick and non-flippant answer is no. Now, the team is not far above the salary cap, okay? So they're going to have to find flexibility one way or the other. So it's a long shot any team will go an offseason without cutting players and even players who helped in the previous season. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for cap-related purposes. But if you look at where this team currently is from a salary cap standpoint, and then you take a look at the ages of some current players, what their contracts are, and what the team needs, and maybe more importantly, the youth that is behind some of these veterans, I don't see any way around it. I have no idea who they're going to be, but the quick answer, Terrell, is no. I don't think there's any way to avoid it. Great question. Thank you. As the Pick 6 continues, we go to Blair from Indiana. What positions do you see as points of emphasis this offseason? I think continuing to fortify the offensive line, and that means all positions, and finding players who have position flexibility, who can play guard and center or guard and tackle. I think continuing to fortify the offensive line is definitely an emphasis this offseason. Now, don't forget, last year, via the draft, they brought in Drew Samia from Oklahoma and Oli Udoh from Elon in North Carolina. It's going to be an interesting offseason, specifically with those two from an offensive line standpoint, to see how much they've grown, how much they've improved, and maybe more importantly, how much they learned in 2019. So I think offensive line is definitely something on which to focus. Likewise for defensive line. I mean, think about that New Orleans game, all right? With Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin moving inside and the pop they got there. Now, Danielle is absolutely one of the very best in the game, but you want to continue to churn with youthful defensive linemen, specifically that 3 technique spot inside, and maybe some depth at defensive end. So I would look at that. You know, cornerback, that could be a precarious situation this offseason. Mackenzie Alexander, Trey Waynes, defensive backs, Anthony Harris, they're all free agents. And Xavier Rhodes is in the second half of his career. So top of the head, those would be three on which I would emphasize this offseason, and also continuing to get depth at running back. That's something interesting too. Thank you for the great question. Next, we go to Tony. Tony was sad to see Jim Marshall miss out on the Hall of Fame once again. Honestly, quick commentary, inexplicable that he's not in. Tony from Bloomington continues. Who do you think will be the next Viking inducted into Canton? That, my friend, is a fantastic question. Now, the left guard, Steve Hutchinson, started his career with Seattle. Then he came to the Minnesota Vikings. He was part of the Minnesota Moving Company in that 2009 season with Brett Favre, where the Vikings almost went to the Super Bowl. Steve recently was a finalist, so it seems like he is sitting on a Hall of Fame berth. Also, St. Paul's Matt Burke. You know, Matt Burke, in my estimation, along with a Super Bowl victory for the Baltimore Ravens, Matt had a Hall of Fame career. Former Viking, joined the team in '98. And Adrian Peterson is still running for the Washington Redskins, and Adrian is still running effectively. Adrian in 2007 came in as a Minnesota Viking, and he had his most glorious years running for the Minnesota Vikings. So I don't know when, don't know what order. Adrian Peterson, absolutely HOF. And we close with this. The Super Bowl hasn't even happened, but what can Alex in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, look forward to this offseason? Alex, fantastic question, because it has many tentacles. We will begin at TCO Studios with all of the elite second-to-none content you are going to get from the Vikings Entertainment Network, keeping you up to speed on your favorite team. Now, as of the time we did this Pick Six, the Vikings still don't have an offensive or defensive coordinator. So you can look forward to who that is and speculating on what it will look like. It also is going to be a very intriguing offseason for many current Vikings and those they will be bringing in specifically through the draft. Via compensatory picks, Rick Spielman, the general manager, has a lot of draft equity, and Rick is not afraid to move draft picks during the course of the stream. So there are a lot of compelling things that will transpire with an already good Minnesota Vikings team, a team that went to New Orleans and won a playoff game. Didn't work out well in San Francisco, but they had a fantastic season, won a playoff game against New Orleans. And if you fortify it the right way, Alex, you can take good and make it even better. Stay tuned to Vikings.com for all of your information regarding everything Minnesota Vikings football this offseason. And you see right there, if you would like to submit questions to Vikings.com/pick6 for next week's edition, go ahead and do so. For all of us here at the Vikings Entertainment Network and from the TCO Studios, I'm Paul Allen.